I have a question for you. Would you live in a mushroom house? I'm not talking about living in a house that looks like a mushroom. I mean an actual house built from mushrooms. To be more specific, I mean fungi. Because the mushrooms are actually the fruit of a fungi. As you can see in this picture, this is mycelium. Mycelium is the root structure in which a mushroom grows out of. If you've had a shovel in your hand lately, I'm sure you know what this is. It's in your garden, it's outside, it's in the forest, it's everywhere. It's one of the many building blocks that helps to keep the ecosystem going. You might be wondering, how is this viable building material? Let's just put it this way. Remember the last time you were outside pulling up a plant and you noticed all the roots underneath and all the clumping that was occurring? It's the same idea. Mycelium is keeping it together like a glue. Also, in another way, when you're seeing somebody at a construction site, they lay rebar and a grid underneath before they pour the concrete for a foundation. It's just another means of reinforcing a structure. You're probably interested in seeing how all this is done. There's so many different people out there, researchers, universities, industries that have such an interest in using this as their new building material. In Columbia University in New York, the biology department has taken some interest in this. They have conducted a certain experiment to show the viability of using fungi in building material. With a mold in the shape of a brick, with some cellulose-based material and some Ganoderma mushroom strain, those combine create what is known as the biobrick. This biobrick is a living, breathing organism. What they have done is brought this Ganoderma strain, put it into this form, and it is still active. The reason why it's still active is because the cellulose is a form of food for the mushroom to live on for as long as it needs until it eventually consolidates and hardens. You're probably wondering why Ganoderma. Ganoderma is used in this application because these types of mushrooms are a lot more resilient to contaminations. So if you see, I have a jar of sterilized cellulose material, in this case millet. If I injected it into here, it has a microclimate and it's cut off from the rest of the world. And then it will basically not contaminate, not like a brick would. So that's why they use Ganoderma, because it's so resilient and it's very strong and thick. Another benefit of having this biobrick, as you can see in this picture, you don't need any mortar. Mortar is used to stick bricks together in traditional construction. When these bricks are together, they fuse together because they're all Ganoderma, so there's not going to be any kind of conflict between them. And that's great in the case if there's a hole, let's say, or a kid of yours throws a baseball or something like that, makes a dent in your house. You just have to put a little bit on there, just putty it up, stick it on there, and there you go. That's all good, no problems. I said cellulose-based material. This can be anything. You have old homes that are in disrepair. You have an old chair that you forgot about outside that's been out in the rain. These are all candidates to be put into a biobrick. The possibilities are endless. There's so many byproducts in corn. There's corn husks. There's hulls in other types of agriculture. There's all this stuff just laying around that the fungus is already eating in nature and breaking down. So the way I see it, you might as well use it to build a house. Using renewable materials is nothing new. Thousands of years ago, all these tribes, indigenous populations, they were using what was ever around in their environment to build shelter. You had clay houses, you had cob houses. Cob houses are fascinating. You have a lot of the same materials that were used then as you are now in these fungi houses. This leads me into another exciting aspects of building homes, 3D printing. I'm sure this is something that you've all have heard about. It is a means of using a machine to build a house. So there's no more construction crew in which all these panels have to be put up manually as in traditional construction. With this device, creating this home by going around a perimeter and layering it over and over again, the mycelium can eat its way and consolidate this structure. And in that way, as I said, with construction materials needing to be reinforced like rebar and a grid, this is a means of doing that. Of course, with anything, there are always pros and cons, especially with this building material. It hasn't been used in the past, and you're probably wondering why, mostly for the fact that we've had wood, stone, minerals that we've had at our disposal. Now with limited resources, it makes sense to take a closer look into building with this stuff. I'll list another few of these cons. Another one being that it can only handle about 30 psi of compression on the brick, as opposed to about 4,000 psi in concrete. So concrete, of course, has been used for so long, and it is tried and true. It's used in skyscrapers, all sorts of huge architectural feats. Another con are bugs. I'm sure you know about bugs. For mushroom growers out there, if you leave your mushroom out, it's going to get eaten by bugs if you leave it out long enough. So you get fungus gnats, all those kinds of things. There are different measures that you can take, as pesticides can get them to go away and not come back. So that's one means of combating this. Another big issue can be contamination. For those that grow mushrooms as a hobby at home, contamination can get into anything. Even after your mushrooms are already grown and your substrate in your block, in this case a biobrick, that contamination can get in there and mess things up. And with any house, you're going to have contamination if you have damp conditions. Sheetrock, wood, all these materials, you're going to have mold growing in the same way that you would in this kind of construction material. So a lot of the things that are recommended is to keep it away from dampness, keep it relatively dry, because if you have things wet, of course, you're going to have some problems. I introduced to you the pavilion. This is an example of a great way of how fungi can be used in construction material. This was built with traditional framing. However, the fungi was used to fill all of the spaces in between, which is huge. That's a lot of surface area. Not only that, if you look inside, you have a bunch of thriving plants. The plants are feeding off of the mushrooms, giving off the CO2. And as you know in biology class, plants love that stuff. Not only that, and as you see, this is a mutually beneficial relationship between fungi and plants, as they do in nature. And what are the recommended uses of this material, you may ask? They are used in temporary structures, such as here, as you see in these images for the New York Hi-Fi, as well as this particular one, the pavilion. These can be examples of concerts, Olympic Games, sporting events, in which you don't really need this here right now, but if you were done with it, you could just put it in the ground, just throw it down, and it'll be absorbed right back into the ecosystem. I'll wrap right back around to the pavilion here with a mutually beneficial relationship between fungi and the plants. This is the same kind of environment that you can have that a human being could live in here, because they're getting oxygen from these plants. This brings us onto a new frontier, potentially in other planets. Of course, Elon Musk, you have SpaceX, you have all these billionaires that are rushing to get out into space. This is a means of bringing a little backpack of fungi and plants, bringing it all with us, and bringing this biosphere in which we are able to produce oxygen while we're in Mars. Just imagine it. You got your plants, you got your fungi, you got your people. What else do we need? Of course, we have to have our microbes, and then voila, we have terraforming on the way. Is this something that you would use as a material in building your house? I might, who knows? Actually, to start, I probably would start with an outbuilding. I would see how it would react to the climate to make sure it doesn't mold on me or deteriorate. But other than that, I think it's a great idea. If it's something that can be used in such a way that is reliable and consistent, I would say this is the way to go. This is something that we need to reduce our impact on the environment. Thanks for watching my video. I do appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe and like for future videos that are coming your way. And until next time, I will see you then.